District of Conservation is sponsored by the Committee for a Constructive Tomorrow, better known as CFACT. To learn more about our sponsor, head over to cfact.org. Thanks for listening to the program.
With a major selection of the looks your kiddos love starting at just $4 in the Walmart app, a new school year means a stylish new them. Who knew? Find skater skirts and Crocs that say, I'm casual but cool. Sparkly sneakers that say, it's my classroom, you're just learning in it. And preppy polos that say, I'm the teacher's pet, even if they're mommy's menace at home. Find their favorite styles starting at just $4 in the app. The Walmart you thought you knew is now new.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Welcome to District of Conservation. I'm your host, Gabriella Hoffman. This podcast offers a sober examination into all things hunting, fishing, shooting sports, energy, environment, and the public policy surrounding it. And this podcast also specializes in original interviews that you won't hear elsewhere. Here's what I have for you today. Welcome to season 8 of the podcast. No better way to kick things off for a new season than to have a very cool guest on the program where he's going to preview a new organization he's launched. And also, it's nice to have someone who gets the picture that energy production and conservation are not at odds with each other. Paul, welcome to the podcast. Good to have you on.
Thanks, Gabby. It's great to be here. It's been fun following all of your work and connecting. So I'm glad we're able to sit down and talk a little bit more about the Midwest and Wisconsin.
Yes. And I know in a few weeks' time, we will have an opportunity to interact in person. I won't exactly detail what that is, but I know our paths will cross very, very soon. But give a little primer on your background, your work in policy, and what led you to start your new organization. I would love the listeners to know what you've been up to.
Yeah, thanks. I have a little bit of a unique background. I spent 13 years as a firefighter and paramedic, but the whole time I spent most of my free time hunting and fishing around this great state, and went back to school at Texas A&M, and now I'm getting a doctorate done in defense and strategic studies. And I've really been diving into the public policy and campaign world around things that I really care about. So a lot on energy and natural resources, and obviously where that intersects with conservation and our best practices around that. And then really trying to drive industry back to our northern and rural areas in Wisconsin, which is kind of what led to the creation of the new group. So we just launched the Northwoods Policy Network, and we realized there was this big gap in a really big chunk of the state with a lot of really important people and industries that didn't really have a voice. A lot of the work that's been done in Wisconsin is pretty focused on kind of these industrial and tech hubs in the southern part of the state, but nobody's really speaking with us up here, up north and in the rural areas. So we're trying to lean into that and say, hey, no, we have a seat at the table. We have a lot of talent. We have a lot of resources and a lot of opportunity up here that just hasn't been tapped into. So we decided to do something about it.
What are some of your primary goals with Northwoods Policy Network?
I think one of the big things first is giving a voice to the region. A lot of times these are areas that people are just really focused on their communities and their businesses and just kind of what they're doing. And they don't always get their message down to Madison or out east. And we really want to be able to share some of those stories. A lot of times this is the region that's on the front end of economic downturns or recessions. But it's also on the front end of poor policy. Whenever you're in an area that's really dependent on natural resources, for whether that's getting energy there or producing it or extracting things from the ground or logging, those decisions impact us first, and then everybody else throughout the state. So it's really kind of highlighting that and really talking about how we can be responsible stewards of our resources, but really unleash a lot of economic opportunity for the people up here.
Talk about Wisconsin's energy profile. You had told me some very alarming stats before, which I think people need to be aware of, especially when you have states like Wisconsin adopt net zero climate goals and how those kind of run counter to kind of this abundance posturing we're seeing. And I think what people forget is even if you're shoring up more domestic production, whether it's critical minerals, rare earth elements within critical minerals, and general energy projects, that you're going to see a despoiling of the environment. Is that what Wisconsin lawmakers, including the current occupant, your governor right now, soon to retire, and there's an open election, is that what his thinking is into that? Like they have this energy scarcity mindset. Share those stats and then talk about kind of how Wisconsin currently views energy.
Yeah. So under our current governor, he and his administration, they fully embraced the carbon-free 2050 plan. And obviously, if you're an electric or power producing entity here, you're going to match kind of what the state direction is. So we started seeing an influx of a lot of renewables in a lot of places that just didn't really make a lot of sense to start achieving this. All the while they're closing, significant baseload power generators down, especially coal throughout the state. So we're seeing this reduction in power generation by 18% since 2019. But in that same time, costs have gone up on average 40% for all users. And that is a big mismatch, especially if you're trying to attract industry, if you're trying to keep costs low for your residents and your ratepayers. It's costing too much to produce less. And we've prematurely shut down a lot of baseload power that now we're trying to rebuild in the meantime to attract data centers and the AI labs and new manufacturers. And so now they're rapidly trying to scale up what that looks like here. So it's kind of a mixed match of again, poor policy and short-sighted decisions that are now having real impacts on people's pocketbooks, but also the opportunity that they have to thrive in their local communities here. So we've seen, especially under the Biden administration, when all the subsidies came in on green energy, 6,000 acre solar fields, massive wind installations. And we're in Wisconsin, like it can produce and probably has a role in some applications. I'm just not really believing that taking out 6,000 acres in one chunk of productive farmland and forests and, habitat is the right way to do that.
Wisconsin reminds me a lot of Alaska, and I've only briefly spent like a few hours in Wisconsin, regrettably, but I know that's changing soon. But I've spent like close to 10 days in Alaska, and I notice a lot of parallels between the two. And through contacts I have like you or friends who live in Wisconsin, I just see so many parallels. Vast natural resources, plentiful outdoor recreation opportunities. But there are two different kind of paths that are diverging. In Alaska, they don't treat resource development as this evil or this thing that shouldn't happen. We see a lot more cautious or reluctance, especially with conventional or nuclear, but we see this rush, as you mentioned, to renewables only. They're fine with renewables being deployed, even though they occupy a lot more land. But could Wisconsin kind of go in the direction of Alaska in the future, where they're not always treating every project as like this negative externality?
Yeah, I think it's an important mindset shift that we just need to be honest and have a discussion about here, because obviously other states are doing this in a responsible manner. Like, listen, we're all on the same team when it comes to preserving, not really preserving, but conserving these great natural resources that we have and the wildlife that lives there. And we want to be able to pursue game and have clean water and everything else too. We also need to be able to afford to live here and to make sure that we can take advantage of these great resources too. And I think that's just the name of the game. Everything has a trade-off. We're going through a big battle right now over what they call Line 5, which is a pipeline running through northern Wisconsin. And everybody wants, every clean environmental group wants to shut it down. They don't want it running through there. But what then they fail to realize is they're still going to move that product, but now it's going to be hundreds of thousands of trucks, and it's still going to be emitting CO2 and whatever else. And it's going to be, hurting our roads. And and a million other things with it. We go through battles over logging, and now we have a lot of old growth forests here that don't really produce a lot of the great habitat for game. And at the same time, they're reducing, money locally and hurting logging jobs and making a lot of our northern forests a little bit more fire prone, which we don't want either. Again, there's this balance to be struck. We don't like mining anymore, but we don't have a problem pushing it to other places in the world where there's human rights and environmental impacts there. Like, you don't escape this stuff. We just believe we can do it more responsibly here with the technology and the labor and the experience that we have. And Alaska is a great model for how to balance those things. I think Wisconsin can definitely get there, but it's going to take a lot of honest discussion and really reforming some of our permitting regulations that kind of kneecap the industry before it even starts. We have our own version of NEPA at the state level called WEPA. We have our own statewide Endangered Species Act stuff, clean water, the same thing. So a lot of it is redundant, and in many cases it exceeds what the federal permitting standards are as well. And while that does protect the environment and do some good things, it also kind of hurts it in the long run because it pushes away a lot of good practices, healthy practices for our land and for our forests.
Do you foresee any mining projects coming not only to Wisconsin, but to the greater Midwestern region, including like what people know as the Iron Range? Or is there still going to be resistance from governors in there? Or does a change in leadership? I know Wisconsin is going to be on people's radars for the midterms. Potentially there could be some change there to a more favorable administration that supports permitting reform, conventional energy projects, critical mining projects. So do you think Wisconsin and nearby states could see domestic critical minerals come, or is it going to face roadblocks like in Minnesota with Twin Metal Mines, even though Twin Metal Mines, for those listening, interestingly enough, pledged to go net zero and to decarbonize their whole footprint as they build, which is funny. But they still did not get approved, even promising that. So what is critical mining in the Midwest, particularly the Great Lakes states, including Wisconsin, look like? Is it doable? Is it feasible? Or is it still going to be hamstrung because of opposition in your respective state capitals?
It's still going to be met with a lot of opposition. And I think, regardless of where elections go next year, we're still going to see a ton of challenges go through our court systems. However, the demand is there, right? The administration has put out numerous EOs. They've sent every market signal possible that we want to rebuild our domestic mining. And the Midwest, especially Wisconsin, holds a ton of value for that. We've done it in the past. We still have a lot of companies and manufacturers that build the mining equipment here. It's become much cleaner, much safer, much more high tech. But we're sitting on untold trillions of dollars of copper, nickel, thorium, like these different really critical minerals here that I think the market's going to demand. Now, if the demand sustains is going to be the question. So in Wisconsin right now, there's a couple of exploratory boring going on right now, especially in central Wisconsin, which ironically enough, the company that owns those mineral rights doing the exploration is a green energy renewable company based out of Canada. They still need the same materials, right? They need copper, and there's only one way to get a lot of this, and that's by mining. So I think there's a ton of potential. I think the right set of, political and policy conditions with a sustained demand signal from the feds would be a great thing here. And again, I'm pretty convinced that we can do this in a very environmentally light impact way and very safe for everybody.
I think that is doable. And more people, even with this reluctance from environmentalists, the greenies, as we call them, I think push is going to come to shove, especially when they're presented with reality that, are you wanting to fund like Uyghur genocide? Are you wanting to fund, harsh labor environments in West Africa or the Congo and the like? And I mean, people forget that transport of critical minerals into the United States is extremely expensive. It's energy intensive. So why not do that here? And then what also people don't understand is China, if you're very nervous about China's rise in the world and their domination of critical minerals, not only the production of it, the harnessing, but also the processing, you would want to see that production come back home. And there have been several mines across the country, new projects and even expansions of existing projects. There's only one critical mineral facility in California that exists, and they're going to be expanded upon. There was a big coal deposit discovered in Wyoming that is going to be home to this robust project. And both of those, if they work to their full potential, are expected to help us wean ourselves off entirely from China in a matter of a couple of years if they're really brought to full production, which would be incredible. So you don't need to have that many critical mineral infrastructure projects in the US. If you have a handful, you're going to be fine. And I think we could wean ourselves off of China. I think we import 10,000 tons from China annually, 70%, which is a very startling number. So if you have a couple facilities in the United States across the US, maybe one or two in the Great Lakes region, but you have assurances that the environmental quality of the project will be observed and that you're going to have this balanced use principle applied there with production. I think that'll quell a lot of people's fears and maybe get some reluctant people to wake up and realize, like, it's better to have it here environmentally, economically. You want those jobs. And then for national security reasons, like, why are we relinquishing this to China? We didn't used to be so dependent on them here, but they have the competitive edge. And so we need to bring a lot of that here. And I think it'll be a force multiplier effect. So, and then everyone forgets, like, environmentally, it's actually really good. Like I said, because you're emitting fewer in carbon emissions, your environmental footprint is less and all that. So it's a win-win in all abilities, but I don't know why we can't get through to them yet, even though we have the evidence that it's much better. And you only need a couple facilities.
Well, and that's the challenge of it all. And it can be really frustrating. Sometimes I think I'm just going a little crazy because I don't understand where people aren't seeing the direction of where things are going. But again, like you mentioned, everybody wants to point to China as this new industrial giant and their near peer that can challenge us across the board. But that's also a choice. And part of the reason why they're gaining so rapidly is they're closest to the production of all these things. So you can innovate and adjust much faster if your engineers and the people doing the design work and the tweaking are also right there. Right. So when we offloaded a lot of that, we offloaded all of the like technological prowess and the dynamic shifting to make things move faster. So if you think about like Wisconsin and some of the mineral stores we have here, what's to say that if you have a great copper production or you find white hydrogen or you find thorium for the new nuclear reactors, you can like refine and produce all of that here and then send it on a train or a truck up to Superior, which is Lake Superior, and put it on a barge and it can go anywhere pretty much instantly. And we're controlling that process. It's much more environmentally friendly. We're not dragging things from every end of the world, having no idea how they got here. So I'm a big fan of the same concept, Gabby.
That's great. And I think as we're talking about energy, more production, why bringing a lot of it back here is not going to despoil the environment, but put us, I would say, more at a competitive edge. We often, of course, I think we'll see, again, this responsibility to protect the surroundings, because as more people become prosperous, as you produce more energy, you're consuming more energy and the like, people will then have disposable income to enjoy things, maybe want to care about their surroundings, take more vacations if they have stable job and employment. And as more people are prosperous and don't have to worry about regulations or being targeted by the government, then they are more likely to care about their environmental surroundings. It's anecdotally, I've seen this. People don't like the term environmentalism. They much favor hearing and support conservation. That's a more palatable term to people. And I think as you enhance a local economy, a region such as the Midwest, the Great Lakes region in particular, you bring these energy jobs there, you see this force multiplier effect, and you see no despoiling in the environment. As a result, it would lead to more conservation, and nobody wants to see anything ruined in Wisconsin or anywhere across the country. But it's really funny that these net zero proponents are like, we got to go full steam ahead with renewables, like land use be damned. Who cares? But it's so funny. They don't weigh the environmental trade-offs. I think we, true conservationists, we do weigh the trade-offs. Like, yes, an energy project will have an impact. Everyone knows this. How do you mitigate it? There are ways to do it without greenwashing or engaging in ESG or something of that matter. And I think energy companies today take much better precautions and better approaches to that. I think of the most recently completed Vogel plant. They have worked for many decades to protect surrounding wetlands. They've brought back and helped to restore a tortoise population that's near threatened or endangered. So a lot of these facilities and energy companies are naturally working with the Fish and Wildlife Service and other government partners to ensure that their projects are not despoiling the environment or encroaching on critical habitat and the like. And I think you could see that with the critical mineral project as well. But related, Paul, to this, everyone hears about Wisconsin. I want to ask your opinion about wolves, because I know you focus on this, and this is also important to hone in on as well, with more people having an eye on Wisconsin and possibly wolf delisting that has gone back and forth between the years. So what is the status of the gray wolf in Wisconsin, and what do you hope federal lawmakers do now that we have a more favorable administration to delisting, or to following the wildlife science, I should say? But do you think that more people will understand kind of the dynamics of the gray wolf in Wisconsin, or do you still see that volleying back and forth?
I think it's a little bit back and forth yet. This is the never-ending saga here. I'm really encouraged by Congressman Tiffany's federal delisting bill with Senator Ron Johnson here. I think it's a bill I support, obviously, and I think it does everything we want it to do. And obviously the administration seems aligned with it. So this would be a great step forward. The thing I'm concerned about with it is there's still going to be a lot of state barriers, even though the federal delisting would likely open everything up and trigger a lot of these management protocols with the DNR. The DNR also just created a new wolf advisory committee, and it's got 14 government employees, 10 citizen volunteers. Well, only 2 of those citizen positions went to people who hunt and spend a lot of their time in conservation efforts, how we see them. So I'm a little apprehensive there as far as like what their role exactly is going to be and how much that's going to impact state decisions. But we have to remember this, in Wisconsin, the original benchmark for the rehabilitation of the gray wolf was 250. Like that was the number they wanted to reach. There's well over 2,000 now, and it's probably closer, if not exceeding 3,000. Even with those numbers, there's still a petition circulating in the state that they want to list the wolf as a state endangered species. So again, like I mentioned before, we have a lot of redundant regulatory systems here, and that's one of them. So hopefully we can avoid that, and we're going to work really hard to do so if we get a federal delisting. But I can tell you the population's recovered. I've spent my whole life here. I will probably spend the rest of my life here. People can come stay with me or anybody in my family. We all live in northern Wisconsin. There's plenty of wolves throughout the whole region and pushing much further south. And honestly, it's time to manage what those herds or what those packs are doing. We're starting to see these shifts, and people can debate about it. But again, we spend so much time working our land or on public land throughout the state that you can kind of see these changes where now we're having, many like black bear encounters throughout parts of the state that didn't really have them before. And you're seeing mountain lions really pushing south into more populous areas. And, I've had friends that have cut across them in Southwest Wisconsin, and they tell their like DNR warden, they're like, no, they're not down here. And then they show them a picture and they're like, well, what is this? And I think what's happening is you're competing for resources too, if you're an animal, right? And the wolf is a dominant apex predator with really no risk. And so it's going to push all kinds of other species into different areas that they haven't been. And we're seeing that in real time now. But I can tell you there's plenty. In the winter, I can stand on the frozen lake and watch a pack of them run across it in the clear moonlight. They're healthy. They're doing well. It's a success story for conservation. But part of that model means that we need to manage them as well.
I think you don't have to choose between the two, between management and seeing them exist. I think that's a position that we've had to go on the defense of.
Right.
And granted, there are some bad examples. You do see some very kind of rogue cases in Wyoming where there is a law on the books that allows you to take a wolf, even sometimes by very ugly means. We saw it with a bobsled. I don't agree with that. I think that was cruel and unusual. I'm not sure if they've reformed the law since then. But for some reason, that individual was able to do that and parade the wolf in a very awful manner. So he's an outlier. People like that are outliers.
Yes.
Even those who support management, because they're very sensitive to the fact that, okay, I want to make sure it's an ethical harvest. It's within the right time. It's a problem wolf. It's not a female wolf with pups. That's what a lot of people forget. But I think also what we're seeing in Colorado is box biology forced introduction gone awry without any guardrails. And we've actually seen more wolves die in the 2 years that this experiment has been adopted formally after Coloradans narrowly voted this measure into effect. We've seen more wolves die than a management hunt would have provided, in my opinion. And I think scientists have also, wildlife biologists have also confirmed that, yes, you would probably see less carnage in this respect, or less culling of wolves. It's expensive. It's a detriment to the wolves. Then they're going to have to bring in more wolves, possibly from aggressive packs. And they could be susceptible to dying, crashing with claws. I think one wolf in Colorado was eaten by a mountain lion. Interesting how nature plays in that respect. So they're not immune to even being preyed on by other competitor species and other apex predators as well. And so when we see experiments like that, people have to understand there has to be a middle ground. You can't have no management. Nobody's going to have an open season on wolves either. They're going to be managed if they're delisted, again, successfully without any interference by litigious groups, radical environmental groups. We will have to see somewhere in the middle. If you care about the wolves and you want healthy management and believe in science, you have to have some kind of middle ground. Hopefully a middle ground does take place in Wisconsin soon. But yeah, I think we're going to be seeing, sadly, more litigation back and forth. I don't know if the Supreme Court settles this finally and says, well, actually, there is a need to manage. Here's the evidence why. They've reached their carrying capacity. And now we have Congress to have to take over this rule and be responsible for determining this. We've already said that they have the power to do so. So we'll see that. But that's a very interesting update. I want to kind of end on a more fun note, because it is fun and riveting to talk to people from all over the country like yourself who have their pulse on what's happening in the region. And I think the Wisconsin area is very, very important to learn. But what is going to be your hunting goal this year? We're now in the midst of hunting season. It's September. People are starting to gear up for hunting. I know you're an avid sportsman. What is on your radar this season, upcoming season? Anything you're targeting in particular?
Yeah, so I'll be spending a lot of time in the woods, pretty much starting a month from today, chasing the white-tailed deer throughout Wisconsin. This year, so I do a lot of archery hunting. I do rifle hunting as well, but archery is kind of like one of my favorite because I can watch the seasons change, and it's just a fun time to be in the woods. But I have had a goal for a while now that I want to harvest a mature public land big woods buck in northern Wisconsin. So as long as it's healthy and mature, we have millions of acres of public land up here, and it's pretty hard hunting. So that's kind of my goal. It's probably going to be a bunch of work and a lot of time trudging through swamps and a lot of failure, but it's going to be fun.
That's very exciting. How about any fishing? Do you do much of trout fishing?
Here and there. I am looking forward to fall fishing now that things are starting to cool down a little bit here. Fall fishing is one of my favorites, September, October, just to be out on the rivers or our lakes up here. And, honestly, I've been having more fun lately ice fishing. So whenever winter does roll around, I will be out on the hard water.
Excellent. Paul, if people want to connect with you, support Northwoods Policy Network, get connected and updated as to what is transpiring in Wisconsin, where would you like to send them to?
Yeah, so Northwoods Policy Network's on Instagram, Facebook, and X, and also on YouTube. You can find us there. I'm also on those socials too, but on X, you can find me at Paul Schecklman. And if you want to stay in tune with what we're doing and believe in what we're doing, we'd love to see you on there and interact.
Wonderful. This has been very fun to talk to you, Paul, and I look forward to connecting with you in person very soon. We'll share what that is for the listeners very, very soon. But thank you for coming on the show and sharing your perspective. A great way to kick off season 8. Much appreciate your musings, and I wish you success in the organization.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you shortly and getting you into our great state for a couple of days. But thanks again for having me on. It was great.
If you enjoyed this installment of District of Conservation, I would love to know your feedback. Send it my way. Please be sure to leave us reviews on Apple, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are played, and also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to never miss a beat nor a guest announcement. Thanks so much for listening to District of Conservation. I hope you have a wonderful day, and please share the podcast to those who may be interested in learning more about these critical natural resources, environment, energy issues.